Welcome to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm so excited for season 2 and the great guests you're going to hear from, their struggles, how they overcame their struggles, their triumphs. Through personal and business life, I think they're tied together, and we're going to share great stories about that. This show isn't just about me. It takes a lot of good people working with me. Among them is my partner, H7 Network, and Clay Hicks. Building relationships, building community is the mission of H7 Network. They want to create a network of champions where everybody wins. Find out more at h7network.com. And we hope to motivate you, inspire you, and educate you through our show. Enjoy the show. We'll talk to you on the other side. Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. As I always say, I've got a new servant today, but he's a servant in business with something I don't know anybody else doing. There's people that teach how to speak presentations, how to speak at a demonstration when you're doing an introduction to your business, your product or service. But Andy is doing something very cool that I love. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Steve. It's great to be here.
I teased you now. Let's get into it. You're called the elevator pitch coach. What started all this and where we are today?
Well, it started the way marketing usually does. I'm a computer scientist by training, so it all started with me programming. But the funny story is that I went to the trade show. I've always been a theater guy, so I was living two lives, technology during the day and theater at night. And one day they were looking for volunteers for the trade show floor. And so I volunteered because, trade shows sounded something up my alley. And so they gave us the marketing, they gave us the talking points, and we went out and did that. And it was fine, and it was fun, and I enjoyed it. And I got back to the engineering floor and said one of the things I'd said on the trade show floor. And Steve, the engineering floor got quiet. And this guy popped his head out from the next cube, and he's like, "Andy, that's not true." And I'll admit that at the code level, at the bits and bytes down in the computer, it was happening in a different order. But from the customer's point of view, the way we were saying it was much clearer. Like it's true. It's not true confessions. It's marketing, right? So it doesn't have to be true to that level. And so that was where it started for me, understanding that there are different ways of talking about things based on what you're trying to get done. And so from there, I owned a business and started cold call selling, and then got told that networking was a way of finding business without having to drag yourself out every morning to do cold calling. And so that's kind of how I got into elevator pitches.
It's interesting. Cold calls, I'm with you. I did them as a 18-year-old doing picture frames, and no, thank you. I'd rather do it this way.
I didn't mind it when I was out doing it. Like once I got out the door and walking down, it was door to door, so it was in person kind of thing. But I didn't mind it once I was doing it. But I had to grab myself by the collar every morning and kind of drag myself out the door. It was hard to get started.
It's funny, young people hear door to door sales. What the heck is that? But that's okay. He's going to teach you how to do virtual door-to-door.
Exactly.
And with that being said, COVID comes, we're jumping on all these Zooms meetings. You developed a program for elevator pitches.
Yep.
Why?
Well, we teach what we most need to learn. And when I started networking, I joined the local chamber of commerce and I started going to the meetings, and it didn't make any sense to me. I wasn't getting any kind of leads from it. Nobody understood what I was doing. Like, it didn't make any sense. But I'm an engineer, so I started putting things together. I started trying things out and testing things, and they kept the stuff that worked. And I say it took me about 8 years to figure out how networking works, but it takes about 3 to 6 months now when I'm teaching someone now. And it all begins with the elevator pitch, right? You find everyone's struggling with their 30-second pitch. They're tweaking it and working on it and trying to get it done. And I have a process that, I can help people with their 30-second pitch, but I find there are actually 2 other pitches that are even more useful when you're business networking, especially, that are kind of easier to come up with and get you better leads faster. So, people are kind of focused on the wrong thing, but helping people focus on starting the conversation. People love it. Like it turns it from some sort of business persona to just being yourself and getting to know people. Like people find that a relief that, that's really what networking's about.
What's the difference between a great elevator pitch, which you teach, to a really bad one?
I don't hear many bad elevator pitches.
Okay.
I'll say that the worst elevator pitch I ever heard was this guy who had a cleaning company, and his pitch was essentially, Well, I'm starting up this cleaning company, and I assume that by the time I have the first client, I'll have the insurance in place. And I mean, again, it's marketing, not true confessions. Like, people will assume that you have all your stuff together, so it's best not to give them a reason to question it. So that's really the only place you go wrong in an elevator pitch. But the mistake people make is that it's not specific enough, right? That what you're looking for is to make it easy for people to send you the right kind of opportunity. And so I really work with people on honing that down, on being really clear about what you're looking for, because in networking, people are looking to help. Like, they're looking to send you the people that'll be helpful to you. And so the clearer you can be about what that is, the better. And so the mistake people make is that they have this kind of generic elevator pitch that sounds like everyone else, doesn't really make them unique. And the best elevator pitches are where it's not just your uniqueness, it's the uniqueness of the people that you're working with. That's what you're really looking for.
I love that, because there's no bad pitches, and that's why you're a servant, because that wasn't bad. And you're right, it's not bad. But is practice important with your elevator pitch?
It's very important. It's very important. There are two kinds of practice. The first is just being able to say it. And again, a lot of what I work with people on are the conversation starters. So there's not a whole lot to memorize. If you have a 30-second pitch, then you can work on some techniques. And I really recommend the best way to practice is just start up or some sort of recorder. You can video yourself or audio record yourself, because somehow turning on the recording device gives you the pressure of being in front of an audience, right? Practicing in front of a mirror, I never recommend, because you're never looking in yourself when you're doing it. So that's a bad way to practice. But you can practice, and everything seems fine. And then you turn on the recorder, and you start like, you're like, oh my goodness, like, why does that happen? But that gives you the pressure. So I like people to practice that way. So I think it is important to practice. But the really important thing, Steve, when you're doing this work, is to practice and see how people are responding to it, right? People always ask me, like, oh, I'm scared that the elevator pitch guy here is going to judge my pitch. And I like to say to people, what I'm looking for from your pitch is to understand who I can introduce you to, right? I know a lot of people, like, I work with a lot of people, I know a lot of people, and I'm listening to your pitch to try to understand who I can introduce you to. And sometimes you come up with someone and sometimes you don't, but there's no judgment in that. It's just like, sometimes it hits and sometimes it doesn't. So the thing you want to practice with your pitch is making sure that the right kind of people are sending you the right kind of introductions and leads. And I have a process. I have a whole process for that, is to help people do that.
What I'm hearing, which I love to hear, is it's pretty much anybody could do this with the right tools.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, we haven't been, well, if you've got time for a quick story, like we've been taught. So my kids are older now, they're in middle school now, but when they were in second grade, they came home one day, and the challenge that day, they'd been shown pictures of like a tiger and a lion and a kid and a house cat. And they had to know that they were all felines, right? That was you're so smart. You can, and as humans, we've done this. Like, we generalize things. We put things into buckets and categorize them and all these things. And that's the way we're taught in school, makes us smart, right? You're smart if you can kind of generalize these things. And people come to me all the time with the elevator pitch, and they say, hey, I do this thing and I do this thing and I do this thing. How do I make a pitch that encompasses all of that? And that's actually the backwards approach, because with the pitch, it works the other way. If you generalize, people can't see themselves in it, right? But if you're specific, then people will feel excluded. Like, well, so you work with 40-year-old men. What if I'm a 50-year-old man? Like, how, and suddenly people have pre-qualified themselves for you. So when you're that specific, and the other thing is that you're looking to get the conversation started. So you're looking for the piece of your business, right? If you have 3 pieces of your business, you pick one for the elevator pitch, because that's the entry point for people. And then once they start talking to you, you can tell them about the other things that you work on, tell them about the other things that are available. So that's the way I like to think about the elevator pitch from that point of view.
This is why I like Andy on my show, because you really broke it down. That I think is a big problem of pitches. Is I do 5 services, I do this, and this, and you're right. They try to cover all those in 30 seconds. You're like, you did better than I did. So when you do elevator pitches and you coach people, is it something that they can get right away, or is it just person to person when you're working with them?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Get right. I mean, were they what's the word I want to use? Were they hone down their pitch that's really good? Is it something that happens quickly, or is it person to person?
So I have a 1-hour program that I do. Okay. So in the 1 hour, I write 3 pitches. I write the 30-second pitch, I write the 7-word pitch, and I write the referral statement. And again, that's the thing people get wrong with this. They spend all their time tweaking their 30-second pitch, but you really want that short pitch and that referral statement, because that's what helps people in your networking group help you. And so I have a 1 hour program that I do those 3 pitches. The first half hour, I have a series of questions that I ask that help me get to know them and their values and their clients. Just it's a really quick deep dive into what they're doing. And then the second 30 minutes, I write the pitches for them. And then there's some follow-up because, it's not a coming down from the mountain sort of thing, right? I mean, it's a minute to learn, lifetime to master sort of thing. And people are always funny because I give them, we come up with the pitches to get they're there on the call. So we come up with the pitch together. I write it, but it's together. And they say, wow, they said that really sounds like me. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, that's my goal. Like, you can't see the label when you're inside the jar, right? From the outside, I can kind of hone in on it. So it only takes that long to come up with your messaging. And again, it's a very holistic, people get on a call and they're like, oh, what's the quick thing? And I'm like, I prefer to do the holistic approach because that gets you the right, what's the right story for you to tell? What's the right client to focus on? I don't know. Like, that's what the hour-long process gives you, is that kind of focus. Yeah. But I run workshops where you can get some of the material quickly, right? I mean, so there are ways of learning it quickly. But yeah, it's not nearly as complicated as people have been making it, right? People think about their niche and all these, all the things, and it's much more straightforward than that. You don't have to think too hard about it.
Yeah. So it's not, anybody can do it.
Oh, yeah.
If they're willing to take action. Right. How important is it? Because I listened to before this show, I was networking last week, and I heard the same pitch from a guy he's been doing for a year. Exact same words.
Yep.
Pretty close, but same idea.
Yep.
Is not that it's wrong, but should you be changing your elevator pitch every so often?
No. I don't think people should change their pitch. The fact that the pitch is a good thing. The fact that you're not sending him leads from it is probably the bad part of the pitch, right? I mean, so I think it's important to make that balance. Like, I believe in changing the pitch when you're figuring out what your pitch should be. But I've been the elevator pitch coach now for 15 years, and I've been using the same pitch pretty much the whole time. Like, it's not, and what you remember is the way this works is you go into a networking event, right, or whatever it is, and you say, I'm an XYZ. And people are like, okay. And of course, they leave the thing and they don't remember you at all because nobody remembers you the first time. People have this sense that they've said it and it's going to be boring the next time they say it. Yeah. But that's not the way it works, right? The next time you say, I'm an XYZ, they're like, oh, yeah, he's the XYZ. He's looking for that thing. Oh, yeah, okay. And the third time you do it, they're like, wait a second, I just saw someone, he needs that. Oh, no, that's over there. And then the fourth time they actually bring you a lead. And so I believe people should use the same one for a month. I think it's always worth using the same one for a month. And then I think people should change it in order to figure out if they can find a better one, right? If you can find one that has more common appeal to people, then you'll get better leads from it. But you'll know pretty quickly once you have kind of a baseline of how it's working, then you'll know when you change it, you'll know instantly whether it's better or worse. But I think it's always worth experimenting. But your pitch should be consistent because otherwise. I did a blog article, and I'm doing a blog article. Otherwise, it's like checking into a new hotel every night, right? Every time you meet someone, there's a new kind of key, and the bathroom's different, and it's different kind of shampoo, and different kind of locks on the doors, and it's confusing to people if you keep changing your pitch. So when you can be consistent, and this guy, his pitch, you know who he is. When you meet someone for him, you'll send him to him. That's a good result.
No, I learned something, as I always do on these podcasts. Thanks, Andy. Confusion. That's a good word. That's a no with your elevator pitch. Talk about that. Talk about confusion.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's interesting. There's two kinds of confusion. There's the confusion where you're doing too many things, right? You call it the laundry list, where you just kind of list everything. And what people think is, well, they'll latch onto something, and that'll, if I say everything, then they'll latch onto something. But it doesn't work that way, right? You know as well as I that if you say a list of things, people just kind of tune out. But the more important confusion is that if people don't know what you're about, it's funny, people send me emails all the time with no conjunctions in them, without the words and or, because when I give talks, I say I don't like the word and in your pitch, and I have to remind people that I'm okay with and as a word. Like, you don't have to remove and from any communication with me. but in your elevator pitch, if you say you do this, if I say I do elevator pitches and business networking, people get lost. I do both of those, but I market myself as the elevator pitch coach, because then once people talk to me and once they've got a pitch, then I can help them with the business networking. That's the first step, right? That's the way people come to me. And so the confusion people aren't aware of is, who should I send to you? Like, who would be useful for you to talk to? And that's really where I work with people on the clarity. We work down and hone in on the clarity of what's going on.
So let's use a plumber. He works for commercial businesses and consumers.
Yep.
So if most of his business is consumer, that's what he should focus on his elevator pitch. Or does he go waffle back and forth maybe a little bit?
Well, never waffle.
Okay,
Never
thank you.
waffle.
Good. Thank you.
What I say to people, the exercise, a quick exercise for folks, if people are confused as to how to do this, what I like to have people do is think about your most recent client. And if his most recent client was, a single woman in her 40s who just bought a new condo, that's what I do plumbing for, 40-year-old women who have just bought a condo. And people are like, oh no, but Andy, I need to cast a broad net. Like I don't want to rule things out. And again, this goes back to what I talked about before. The generalities don't get you the conversation. If you talk about 40-year-old women or 40-year-old men, people say, well, but my brother's a 30-year-old guy, could you help? He has this problem. Could you help him? And look at what happens there, Steve. Like they pre-qualified. That's the holy grail. People are like, how do I know who I'm talking to? When you're specific, people will tell you. They'll tell you what they're looking for. I don't fit into that category, but I'm in this category and I could still use your help. And so that's real. And so for the plumber, I would encourage him to, did you work on a 30-unit condo building? Did you work, in a 2-family house? Did you work in a single family house? Are you working on houses, in Natick? Like, name the town. Like the people know if they're in the town, right? I'm looking for single family homes in Natick. Like that. That's a great way of doing it. And again, people don't like it. And it was tough for me. Becoming the elevator pitch coach, I have a very broad coaching practice. I help people with the elevator pitch and with business networking and with presentation skills and with delegating. I just have a really broad practice. And it took me 18 months to become the elevator pitch coach because I was worried I was limiting myself. But the amazing thing is, and this happens every time I work with people on this, it feels too narrow, but the narrowness is what causes the conversations. And once you're in the conversation, then they can learn more about you. I sell more of everything now. Being the elevator pitch coach and marketing that I sell more of everything because people know how to come to me. They know why to come to me. And then
that's the best statement, Andy, of any of my podcasts, because that is the number one fear. I do all this stuff and
right.
Like what you said, I'm so glad you're an audience. Make sure you hear that. Listen to this over again, because that is probably the biggest tip he's given to you for free, which I appreciate him doing that. But on top of the tips and advice, you do workshops. Yep. Let's do a shout out. I know you got one coming up. Give me a shout out how they can reach out to you and talk about the newest workshop coming up.
Well, I'm doing a new workshop this coming Monday. I know podcasts we're talking in May. So, but this workshop is actually going to be on how to turn networking conversations into sales appointments. And it's one of those things that everyone's confused about. I'm meeting all these people and it's great, but when do I get to sell? Like, when do I have the chance to sell? And I'm certain that I'll be. This is a new program I'm doing next week, but I'm sure I'll be doing more of these. Just check my website, improvandy.com for upcoming programs. And I don't want to give too much of it away, but the interesting thing about it is that when you have a particular way of talking about your work, you can instantly gauge whether people are interested in it or not. And if they're interested in it, then you can talk about it. And if they're not, then you don't have to. Then you can look for other ways to help them. And so that's really, so that'll be the crux of it. But the way my work, we workshop it. So you get some ideas and you work on it and practice some things. And that's the way we'll do it. But yeah, it's a really fun program because that's the goal, right? The goal of networking is you want to be doing sales. But what do you do if you're stuck in all this networking? And so I have a series of tips we're going to go through on how to turn that corner, like how to. And I do this all the time. Like I do a lot of networking talks, and I would say that 70 to 80% of the networking conversations don't result in any sort of client thing. But the other 20, some become clients, right? I mean, they're interested in the hour-long program or in one of my paid programs or whatever it is. And so you just never know. But as I'm talking about my work, again, a specific way of talking about my work that helps you gauge whether people are interested in hiring you or not.
20% is a good number.
Oh yeah.
And listeners, I know I've heard testimonials of the workshops. If you network at all, these workshops, he does free workshops. That's a servant heart that he has, which leads to learning a little bit. And we're not on this show. We're not trying to get your best elevator pitch. You need to reach out to him. And how can they get a hold of you, Andy?
Well, the best way is through my website, improvandy.com. And I can give my phone number too, if you want. I mean,
That's up to you. Absolutely.
that's 617-794-9797. It's a great way to reach out to me. But on my website, you can, you can't actually sign up for my hour-long program on my website because I like to talk to people before they do that. Like you can't just sign up without me meeting it. So we got to meet. So if you go to my website, you can get on my calendar. There's a way to get on my calendar there. And
hey, listeners, I'm putting out a challenge. Let's fill up his calendar for June.
That'd be great.
He may like me or not like me, but we're going to do it anyways. And can I get a little crazy? I'm going to get, because I love what you're doing, Andy. I've known you for almost a year. Can I get a little crazy?
Yeah.
I want to give out gifts. So the first two people that reach out to Andy, Andy's going to let me know. I'm going to send you both a gift.
Oh.
And it'll be worthwhile because and if you're not the first two, reach out to him because like he just said, he's going to do a discovery call. I guarantee if you network at all, you're going to jump aboard. He's changed my life for my elevator pitch. And I thought I had a good one and I didn't. With that being said, we're running out of time here. When people network, what's kind of an overall mistake they make that the audience needs to hear?
The biggest mistake people make when they're networking is confusing networking with sales. And it sounds like a really weird thing to say because how is that confusing? But I'll tell people that if you're studying attendance lists or collecting business cards or have some sort of follow-up process that you follow on those business cards, you're selling. You're looking for prospects. You're looking for people that you can sell to. And what I like to tell people is that you sell to prospects. And I'll be the first to say, if you're at a networking event and you meet someone who has the burning desire and the budget for what you offer, you should set up a sales meeting and then go back to networking with other people because you sell to prospects. You network with non-prospects. And that's the thing people really don't understand that, I say network and people are like, what does that mean? It means you have a coffee meeting, you have a one-to-one, you sit down and you get to know that person. That's where all these opportunities come from. And so what I like to tell people is that the purpose of the networking event is to meet 2 to 3 people you'd like to follow up with, have a second conversation. And that's where it all comes together in those second and third and 10th, 20th conversations.
Building relationships.
Absolutely.
I like that. I like the prospect, separating the prospect with the sales. And then the last thing, framing those calls. How important is that? After the networking. So me and you meet, we're jumping on a call.
Oh,
how's important?
I have some material on that as well as to kind of how to make those useful and how to make sure you're prepared for that conversation. What you need to bring to that in order to make sure that first of all, you're listening and you can help people. I call it opportunity spotting because we're not really trained how to do this. And I'll be helping someone with networking and they'll go to an event and then we'll have our call. And I'll say, okay, well, tell me about the event. I'm like, it wasn't a great event. I'm at this and that and the other. I'm like, wait a second. Like that person. I was like, the person you just mentioned, like, that sounds like a good person to reach back out to. Like, oh, yeah, I hadn't even thought about. Yeah, so you kind of have to tune. You have to tune your antenna for it. It's partly having the right pitch, but also tuning your antenna because you don't need to send people clients, right? I mean, you can send people all sorts. You could send people a book, a book recommendation that they could read. I mean, that could be helpful to someone. So it's this opportunity spotting, and that again, there are things you can do at the. I know Mr. Clay Hicks has a great way of doing that too in the H7 network, and our teachings are similar, but you do want to do some research on how to make those meetings worthwhile so you can actually get some value.
Yeah, no, that's great. The opportunity. What do you call it? Say that again. Opportunity
spotting. I call it opportunity spotting.
That's fantastic.
You hear someone say something, and then you think of someone you can give them to help them.
Referral partners.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, but it doesn't even have to be a referral. That's the thing. It doesn't even need to be a referral partner, right? I mean, you could give them someone that's much less interesting than that, right? The referral partner is kind of a high bar, right? But of course, the referral partners come from getting to know people. So it's that's how I like to think about it.
Well, Andy, you definitely know what the hell you're saying. I said hell because I'm fired up. I've known you for a long. I've learned a lot more about you. Again, listeners, reach out to him, please. Because he can change your business drastically in 2 to 6 months. I've seen it. I've seen people grow. He's helped so many. Jump on one of his workshops too. It'll be in his notes, the show notes, his information. Thank you, Andy. God bless you. I'm going to follow you. We're going to have you back because there's a lot more we can talk about. 20 minutes doesn't do it justice. But can I ask a favor?
Sure.
Can you leave my audience with a great tip that's helped you through your journey through business and life?
Yeah, the tip I'd like to give, Steve, is start conversations. right? None of this stuff happens if you don't start the conversations. And, people, back when we went to in-person events, there was always people, hanging out on the fringes. And if you can be the one to approach people, if you can be the one to be the one initiating the contact, right? Everyone's like nervous about it. But remember, the people who are against the wall, they're so nervous, they can't even leave the wall. Right. So if you can approach them with a smile and say, "Hi, I'm Andy," or whatever your name is, that it really breaks the ice and helps start. And anything you're doing, if you think about any of the opportunities you've got, it all started with a conversation. And that's what I really teach people, is how to start those conversations confidently and kind of knowing how to move them forward. So yes, my recommendation is to go out there and start conversations.